All right, people, to finish off the series, we busted out the Limpin' is Pimpin' shirt because, we did a lot of that specifically for this Super High Roller Bowl. Came in with a very specific strategy, exploitative from the get-go. And it all comes, though, first from, learning about theory and then sort of deciding for myself, combining my brain that's been a poker brain for many, many years, how people are misapplying it. And some things that I think I could throw them as far as left and right hooks that would be successful, and it was, as we know, the result already. But we are going to just jump right into a hand, except before I do that, see, because I remember now, I want to let you guys know, right? You can watch the entire Super High Roller Bowl and a whole bunch of other stuff like high stakes poker, no gamble, no future, high stakes duel, like all the great poker content you can watch at Poker Go. And you can use promo code Daniel2023, and you'll save yourself $20 off an annual prescription. You know what I'm saying? All right. Okay, so there's three of us left. A battle back and forth, everybody deep. At this point, I'm the chip leader with a little bit of an advantage over Nick, and you see Lucky Chewy bringing up the rear. In this hand, the blinds are 15 and 30,000 with a 30K big blind ante.
I know how this would go for me, pal. Not good.
So you're making a decision for your health, is what you're saying.
That's right. I have a family now. I have to kind of,
right.
Well,
I guess I can respect that. As insulting as it
Chewy.
may be. Not altogether cryptic.
Fair enough, pal,
It's all right.
I try to be a straight shooter nowadays. Come to admire the kind of just blunt sort of, you don't want to be mean, but, defend here from Negreanu.
Nick folds the button, and now Chewy's in the small blind, and this is going to be important later to reference the suits. He's got the Queen of Spades, 10 of Diamonds. So now a hand like Queen 10 off in the small blind against the big blind player who has you covered, and also is pretty sticky. I consider myself pretty sticky from the big blind in position against small blind raises. I'm going to defend a very, very high frequency of hands. Queen 10's an okay hand, right? I think it's a hand that you should predominantly have in your limping range. Not to say you shouldn't ever raise, but if you are going to raise, the size Chewy picks is very good. It's four times the blind, really, pushing the envelope a little bit. And you should have some kind of a raising range at this stack depth from the small blind. But again, I think Queen 10 generally does better as a limp, but that's not to say that you can't raise with it some of the time. Also, that goes out the window when you have players in the big blind that overfold, right? When players overfold in the big blind, you should just be opening a lot, especially in ICM spots where people are very conscious of that. So I don't know how Chewy came to this conclusion to raise with this one, because I imagine that he has Queen 10 in both his raising and limping range. Maybe he randomized, maybe he didn't, maybe he went with, connected with the poker gods and decided. But he ends up raising. And now we have Jack 10 off. With Jack 10 off, this stack depth, I think it's just a call. I really don't see any other thing to do. You're never going to fold this hand. As I said, I'm pretty liberal in how I defend my big blind. And it's really not a hand that I want to 3-bet, right? The hands that you want to 3-bet in these kind of positions against the 4X raise are polarized. What the heck does that mean? We've used that word a lot. Your really good hands, your ace, king, aces, kings, queens, jacks, those ones. And then your bad hands. So instead of like Jack 10, if I had like Jack 3 of diamonds, maybe that's a hand I might 3-bet, right? Or something along those lines. But Jack 10 hits a lot of flops. It plays pretty well post-flop. It's not a hand I want to 3-bet and then be forced to fold to a 4-bet. If I did it with Jack 3 offsuit or Jack 3 suited and my opponent 4-bets, well, now it's an easy decision, right? So part of what you want to think about in terms of how you proceed in poker is, giving yourself easy decisions. The hand that used to really drive people crazy was ace-queen. Like, oh, ace-queen's the hardest hand to play. And I'm like, that's only because of how you're playing it, right? Because in a lot of cases, people would play ace-queen, and without realizing it, they're turning it into a bluff by 4-betting. Like when you 4-bet with ace-queen, you're not 4-betting for value very often. That's kind of in your bluffs, right? When you're but it's not clear to a lot of people when they 4-bet ace-queen that it's a bluff. They think, oh, I'm 4-betting because you're pretending you have a better hand than you do. Like that should be, closer to the bottom of your range. Now, if you're 4-betting with ace-4 suited, cat jam stuff, now you're clearly bluffing, and you know that. And once you do that, if somebody 5-bets, you have an easy decision. But with ace-queen, you put yourself in a tough spot, right? So the theory behind that is when you are 3-betting, right, you want to be 3-betting in these spots with hands that you don't, if you 4-bets, you're not like, oh, shit, I wish I could have seen a flop, right? So with Jack 10, I mean, I kind of want to see a flop in position. And just calling the 3-bet is going to be the standard play.
I don't have a lot of feelings. Right?
Well, you're very sensitive,
This
but
is
real feelings and emotions, no. You're essentially void of those, but you are very sensitive, which is interesting. It's a kind of,
Okay, here comes the flop. It's Jack 9, 6, 2 spades, 1 diamond. Now, Chewy has an interesting decision here, I think, because he has flopped an overbet and a straight draw. He did raise before the flop, so he's going to have range advantage in one sense, that he's going to be the guy that has aces, kings, and queens more often than I do, because I would have 3-bet those hands. Pocket jacks, stuff like that. But when I do call his call 4x raise from the small from the big blind, I'm going to connect with this board a lot. Jack 9, 6 is going to hit a big percentage of the range that I call with. 6, 7, 8, 9, 9, 10, Jack 10, Jack Queen, Jack 8. Like, there's just a whole bunch. And even the ones that aren't there yet, like 7, 10, 8, 10, a lot of straight draws. So, generally speaking, from Chewy's perspective, he has to sort of look at that board and think of like, all right, how do our ranges battle in this spot? And he realizes that that's going to connect with mine a high percentage of the time. If the flop came something like king, deuce, deuce, I think that's a spot where he's going to almost always make a small bet. But a board like this, that's a little bit iffy range on range action in terms of how it interacts, right? So I like the check. It's interesting. He decides to check with the intention of check calling or check raising. He also, as I mentioned, he has two very important suits, right? With the queen of spades, which blocks some queen eye flush draws, and the 10 of diamonds, which connects to some backdoor draws, which will be relevant in a minute. So Chewy decides to check, and I check. And now you're going to look and go, why'd you check, Daniel? You have top pair. You got to protect your hand. There's 2 spades out there. You can't let the flush card come off. Like, there's a whole bunch of like beginner-like thoughts people have in these spots of like protecting your hand. If you bet the flop, he's not folding the flush draw anyway. You're not really protecting against that. You're charging it, yes. What we're doing is we're protecting our turn range, and that's going to be relevant when we get to the turn. But it's really important in these spots to not be so straightforward, right? That when you bet, you have something, and when you check, you have maybe a 9, a 6 at most, right? Because when you do that, you're capping your range significantly on the turn. And a lot of really good players are going to absolutely destroy you if you're always betting top pair on flops, because now on turn, they're just going to come with the hammer, which, coincidentally, is what Lucky Chewy chooses to do.
Top pair for Negreanu, open-ended for Chewy. Dual suit interaction now for Chewy in a very kind of big bet board. At least it's possible. One could probably have other sizes as well here, I would think.
Pre-flop, Chewy shot it up to 120. A 4x. Negreanu called the extra 90. Both players checking. With top pair, Negreanu now facing a barrel.
Chewy going for 150% a size that he's utilized quite a lot today. And just in general, and of course for Negreanu, we have a call. And Chewy has a sort of fun plan for this one. Maybe make the nuts.
405, right?
Or maybe bluff a spade or a diamond. 1.08 in the middle.
Turn card is the 3 of diamonds, right? So this is a really interesting one. And I'm not going to run it, but you can if you like, with PO solver or whatever solver you choose to use. So Chewy has a very interesting hand. Number one, I check back flop, so my range is supposed to be capped, right? I don't really have aces, kings, and queens here, so we know we can rule out those. The question is, do I have sets and 2-pair combos? I know that I do, right? But most players are not, right? Do I have a lot of top pair? Not really. Again, because for the most part, when checked to, people are going to bet these hands. This is why it's important to have some of those strong hands in your check back range. If not, Lucky Chewy can just, in theory, with whatever he has, overbet turn, and you have to fold. Because my range can't defend against that, right? I can't just call an overbet with a 6 or just a random 9. So anyway, we're going to get to that in a sec. But the interesting question for Chewy here and what to do is how much to bet. And I love his bet size. He goes for 1.5 pot. He bets 405,000 into 270, right? This is very, very good. This is exactly what a solver probably likes to do. Now you can ask the question, and you should think about this. I don't know how much, how Chewy got to this sizing with this specific combo, But I think it's important to think about, all right, why is it good to have the queen of spades and the 10 of diamonds when you make this bet? Is it good or is it bad, right? The queen of spades blocks spade draws, as I said. The 10 of diamonds blocks backdoor flush draws, right? It also does one other thing, right? Your hand has two relevant blockers that can not just barrel this turn card, but if a spade or a diamond comes on the river, the number of combos of flushes your opponent have, which is me, is minimized because you have a blocker, but you can obviously have either one of those flushes. So the overbet isn't designed to simply bet and be done. The overbet is designed that if I do call because I'm in the stronger part of my range or I have a very big draw, that he has a really nice hand to pretend to make a flush or something on the river. So now decision on me, right? All three are options. Fold, right? Now if I fold this hand, when the hell am I ever going to be calling, right? Remember we talked about defending different spots and different nodes as they call them? If you're checking back top pair and then your opponent overbets and you fold that, oh my God, then you're literally only calling with two pair or better, which means they can do that all day long and just print EV because you're never going to call. You can't defend adequately. So once we check back flop with the jack, we're 100% slam dunk calling this turn. If we had a hand like 6-7, maybe even like a 9-6 without good blockers and stuff like that, or not 9-6, but like 9-5 suited or something, maybe we elect to fold those. But I think in this spot, we must call with every jack and every two pair or better combo, okay? Now the question is, why not raise in this spot? I think you have to sort of protect your calling range here a little bit as well, and also open up the door for him to potentially fire another bullet on the river against what is perceived to be like a cap range, right? I kind of have, once I called the overbet, I kind of have exactly what it looks like I am supposed to have. Jack 10, Jack Queen, check back the flop, now call the turn. That or, again, some draws. Now, if you're Chewy, you look at that and you go, okay, some draws, but I blocked all of them. I blocked the queen of spades, the queen tens. I blocked the 10 of diamonds backdoor draws that would have checked back flop. Let's say, for example, I had a hand like king 10 of diamonds, right? I might check flat flop, check back flop, and then pick up the flush draw on the turn. But he knows I can't have that, again, because he has the blockers. So he has a lot of interaction with this board. So I like this overbet. And again, for us, I think pretty much it's just always a call, right? Because again, if we fold this, we're folding too much. And I think raising, it's too light and too thin to be raising this hand, right? You're going to get called maybe sometimes against like massive combo draws if he's getting the right price, or every single time you're absolutely dead. You're never getting called by a hand that you have crushed. It's just never going to happen. So it's kind of a little bit of a punt. And more importantly, if he is planning on bluffing one more street, by raising, we don't give him the opportunity to do that.
Call is made and Chewy fails to connect.
Now Chewy's blockers become sort of poor, albeit blocking the 10-8, which of course is very relevant. But naturally the other side of this token is just queen high. I would think we give up here a very fair amount.
Check is a good price. Check.
He does wave the white flag, fair enough.
Jack.
Great pickup for Negreanu there.
Once the 405 is called,
well, we really want him to have a draw when we're trying to construct bluffs on the end. So
green behind or one?
while he has good blockers on the turn, on the river,
It's fine. I just couldn't see.
blocking all these flush draws is not exactly our
I have
friend.
1-3.
Perhaps we would prefer ace deuce of clubs and so on.
Okay, so the river is the 7 of hearts. So now Chewy does think for a little while, and he's trying to think about whether or not he can turn the hand that he has into a bluff now. And I think now, oddly enough, because I called turn, having those cards in his hand means that he shouldn't bluff. Why? You just said, Daniel, that him having these blockers means he's setting up a bluff on the river. Aha, I said so if a spade or a diamond comes. But because they didn't, what you have now are reverse blockers. Because what you're doing is you're blocking a lot of the hands that I could have that might call turn and fold river, right? The king 10 of diamonds, I can't have that. The queen 8 of spades, I can't have that. The king, these types of hands. So what he has now, oddly enough, is he has a very good bluff candidate on the turn, which turns into a terrible bluff candidate on the river. right? So he elects to check, and I'm like, "Phew," right? And I check back, of course. You would never, ever bet here with a Jack-10. There's no upside whatsoever. You know, we've talked a lot about how to value bet on the river, and one really important factor is you have to beat some hands that will call. What hands are those in this spot? If Lucky Chewy has a value hand, it's probably better than Jack-10. And if he doesn't, he's not calling anyway.